Zhongyi gazed at Yang Yi too. Everyone watched as Yang Yi looked up into the sky and smiled. Progenitor. My presence in the weapon path doesn't make a difference. But even then, before I leave, I still would like to say something. Does fairness exist in the weapon path? A long moment of silence ensued before a voice came from above. Go on. Yang Yi smiled. Why didn't you show yourself when the prediction line tried to kill me? Yet now, when we the slaughter line want to kill them, you've shown yourself and want us to stop just like that. Progenitor, do you think it's fair? Young martial uncle remained silent. The others remained silent too. They were silent because they didn't dare to interject. Suddenly, Yang Yi added, even if I become the seal master, only others are allowed to attack me. But I can't attack anyone in the weapon path. So what's the point? As far as I'm concerned, it's pointless. Of course, these are my own complaints. In any case, the weapon path would still be the weapon path without me. He cupped his fist at Zhongyi and continued, Senior Zhongyi, it's not that I refuse to complete our agreement, but I'm unable to do so. You said that if someone in the weapon path dared to bully me, then you would bully them. Yet now, that half-step sage from before is still alive and well. I'm not blaming you, I just feel that if I stay, I wouldn't know it before I die one day. Farewell. Yang Yi turned around and walked away. He didn't hesitate at all. Suddenly, Zhongyi said, Wait. Yang Yi stopped, and then he gazed at Zhongyi. Zhongyi looked up at the sky. Ancestor, when my slaughter line was annihilated, you weren't in this universe, so I don't blame you. As for when you stopped me from taking revenge, it was to prevent the weapon path from engaging in internal strife, so I don't blame you too. However, now that I want to rebuild the slaughter line, the prediction line still refuses to leave us alone. But when I've acted again, you're stopping me once more. Since that's the case, why keep my slaughter line? He bowed towards the sky. As that kid, Yang Yi, said, my presence in the weapon path doesn't make a difference. The weapon path will still be the weapon path without us. He suddenly looked at Han Xian and continued, from this moment onward, I cease to be a member of the weapon path, and I won't stay in the weapon dimension. However, if I encounter you or anyone from the prediction line outside of the weapon dimension, then I will kill you even if I have to chase you to the ends of the world. Everyone from the prediction line had an extremely unsightly expression on their faces. Zhong Ye's strength was so terrifying. So, if their ancestor wasn't there to keep him in check, then not to mention the prediction line, even the four clans would probably be unable to endure his revenge. Meanwhile, Zhongyi gazed at Yang Yi. Let's go. Yang Yi wanted to say something, but Zhongyi shook his head. Forget it. It's grieving for me to stay here too. Can't be helped, our fists aren't large enough. Let's go. As soon as he finished speaking, he waved his right hand and intended to take Yang Yi with him. Suddenly, their expressions changed slightly because the scene before them was changing rapidly. Yang Yi was about to act when Zhong Ye's voice resounded in his mind. Don't resist. Yang Yi immediately stopped. A long time passed before the scene in front of them calmed down. At this moment, they were high above in the clouds. It wasn't the clouds of the weapon dimension. There was an old man with shoulder-length hair seated cross-legged deep within the clouds. The old man's figure was only faintly visible, and Yang Yi couldn't see his appearance at all. However, Yang Yi had guessed the old man's identity. It was the weapon path's ancestor. Both of you are resentful, the weapon progenitor suddenly said. Of course I'm aware that it's quite unfair to both of you, but what do you expect from me? If I stand on your side, then based on your character, both of you would destroy the entire weapon path, right? They fell silent. Meanwhile, the weapon progenitor added, Little Yi, you should be very well aware that the weapon path can't endure more internal strife. Because a new era is coming, and not only will the god race appear once more. Some other prehistoric races may show themselves too. We aren't in the same era from the past where everyone was united. All the clans and races govern themselves. If we engage in internal strife, then countless lives in the weapon dimension and even my own may be lost. This is no exaggeration. Zhongyi spoke in a low voice. Ancestor, then why did you allow Han Xian to annihilate my slaughter line? That was an oversight of mine, the weapon progenitor explained. However, do you know why the other lines didn't interfere when the prediction line wanted to annihilate your slaughter line? You know a part of the reason, but you don't know the true reason. The slaughter line's desire for slaughter was too strong. Your disciples looked down on everyone, and they treated themselves as the leader of all lines in the weapon path. Your senior brother wasn't able to manage this well. The weapon progenitor shook his head. I did try to warn him, and I did try to stop it. However, he didn't truly take it seriously. When I went to the ends of space with the progenitors of the Tao path, Buddhist path, and Confucianist path in search of that thing all those years ago, Han Xian grabbed the opportunity this created and annihilated the slaughter line. I never expected that either. Xianxia spoke in a low voice. Then why didn't you punish him? The weapon progenitor asked. Is 500 years of imprisonment not enough? Xianxia frowned slightly, because he didn't know about it. The weapon progenitor explained. I didn't announce it, so that the prediction line wouldn't be without a leader and get pressured by the other lines. The weapon progenitor suddenly gazed at Xianxia at this point. In the beginning, I thought you just selected him for fun to look for trouble with the prediction line. So I didn't give him the real weapon seal. But I never imagined you to be serious. And I never expected the person you chose to be someone so extraordinary. Xianxia replied. I went to the dead dimension to try my luck, and it just so happened that I met him. The weapon progenitor nodded and gazed at Xianxia. If I'm not wrong, you have the Tao Path's inheritance too, right? Xianxia nodded. He didn't lie about it because playing tricks before a person like this was undoubtedly foolish. The weapon progenitor asked, What's your name in the Tao Path? Xianxia told the truth. The ninth sword. The ninth sword. The weapon progenitor spoke softly. Looks like the Tao progenitor is serious too. Xianxia spoke in a low voice. Why were you willing to let me join the weapon path when I'm from the Tao path? The weapon progenitor smiled. Firstly, there's a slight connection between my weapon path and the Tao path. While we aren't allies, our relationship isn't bad. Secondly, why can't someone hold the inheritances of two paths? Xianxia asked. What if the Tao path and weapon path get into battle? Aren't you afraid that I would help the Tao path? The weapon progenitor grinned. Why should I think like that? As far as I'm concerned, if such a day comes and you side with my weapon path, then wouldn't we gain another powerful expert's support? Xianxia glanced at the weapon progenitor. I admire your optimism. His admiration came from the heart. Many people, including himself, would think negatively at most times. It wasn't that negative thoughts were bad. It just meant that a person would be comparatively lonely as a result of it. The weapon progenitor sized up Xianxia and said, Since both of you are being so serious, then I have to be serious too. He flicked a golden seal over to Xianxia. It's the true weapon seal of the slaughter line, and it's ranked at the third amongst the seals of all 6 lines. It contains a technique that's perfect for you. Xianxia added, Very perfect. Xianxia glanced at it and then he said, I'm not someone who acts insensibly, and I understand the kindness you're showing me. However, if I stay in the weapon path and represent the slaughter line, the prediction line and the other lines will definitely try to scheme against me. I'm not afraid of that. I'm afraid that if they attack and I fight back, then you don't allow me to again. If only they can attack me, but I can't fight back. It's too aggrieving and against both my sword Tao and heart. Xianxia's lips twitched. He wanted to say something, but he didn't say anything in the end. The weapon progenitor suddenly said, You don't have to worry. Possessing that represents that you have my acknowledgement, so the other lines won't look for trouble with you. At the very least, they won't do so openly. Moreover, after what Xianxia did, they will be even more afraid to look for trouble with you. Xianxia shrugged. I'm still a little afraid. Xianxia's eyelids twitched. This kid is up to his tricks again. Who was the weapon progenitor? How could he possibly not know what Xianxia was thinking? So, he sized up Xianxia and flicked a golden talisman to Xianxia. It contains a strand of my divine sense. Even though it can't kill a sage, even a sage will be forced to retreat before it. Is that all right? Xianxia smiled and quickly took it. Of course it's all right. Yang Yi hesitated for a moment and added, Ancestor, we're part of the same family now, so I'm sure you're able to discern that an evil treasure is following me. It has been following me for a long time, so can you help me destroy it? Would he even dare? Suddenly, a voice resounded from behind Yang Yi, and then a blood-red face appeared not too far behind Yang Yi. Yang Yi's hairs stood on end. What the heck is this evil treasure? There's a progenitor in front of me. She doesn't even fear a progenitor? A chill ran down Yang Yi's spine. It doesn't even fear a progenitor? This time, Yang Yi was really shocked, because he was standing before the weapon progenitor. But the evil treasure wasn't afraid at all. In an instant, Yang Yi felt that he was in deep trouble. The surroundings fell silent. The blood-red face laughed coldly behind Yang Yi, and it was quite horrifying. Suddenly, the weapon progenitor waves his right hand. Bang! An explosion resounded behind Yang Yi, and then the blood-red face warped with pain. Yang Yi was overjoyed when he saw the weapon progenitor act against it, but the weapon progenitor suddenly stopped. The weapon progenitor spoke indifferently. Don't think that no one in this world dares to kill you just because of your slightly special identity. Not to mention something like you, even the heavens won't survive if it courts death. The blood-red face spoke ferociously. Old man, we have a long time ahead of us. It vanished once it finished speaking. However, Yang Yi could sense that it wasn't gone at all, and it was hiding behind him just like it always was. Yang Yi gazed at the weapon progenitor and laughed bitterly. What is that thing? Even you can't do anything about it. The weapon progenitor fell silent for a short while before he said, Some things are better left not unknown to you for now. You just have to remember that while it's difficult to deal with, you're not ordinary either. So you don't have to fear it. I'm sure that it'll fall into its own trap soon enough. Yang Yi rolled his eyes. He was just beating around the bush and didn't explain anything. Meanwhile, the weapon progenitor suddenly said, The weapon path needs peace. Not just the two of you, but the other lines as well. Good luck. He vanished once he finished speaking. Meanwhile, the scene before them started to change, and they were on the peak of Prediction Mountain just 15 minutes later. At this moment, there wasn't anyone here. Zhongyi said, Go to Martial Emperor Academy. No one from the weapon path will look for trouble with you for now. Once you get to Martial Emperor Academy, it's best if you keep a low profile. People who are arrogant there are usually the first to vanish. We should be arrogant when we should, but we also should stay humble when we should. Yang Yi nodded. I understand. Zhongyi, once you join Martial Emperor Academy, other powers won't be able to interfere. So, if you die, we can only bury you. Remember that you only have two goals. The originate and see if you're able to gain a position in the academy. He patted Yang Yi on the shoulder. Be careful. Zhong Yi vanished once he finished speaking. Yang Yi frowned. His intuition told him that Martial Emperor Academy wasn't a good place at all. However, he didn't have much choice. Moreover, he wanted to have a look at that place and the originate there. Yang Yi glanced at the surroundings. He was about to leave when he thought of something, and he went to Gracious Mountain. An old man was sweeping the floor outside the third palace on Gracious Mountain. It was Elder Yuan. Yang Yi smiled. Elder Yuan sweeping? Elder Yuan spoke indifferently. You think I'm sweeping? Yang Yi fell silent. Elder Yuan said, What? Do you need something? Yang Yi smiled. I just wanted to let you know that I'm leaving. Elder Yuan asked, Martial Emperor Academy? Yang Yi nodded. Elder Yuan spoke softly. Martial Emperor Academy is filled with geniuses. Besides all the races and for top clans, there are some other mysterious races in there. So, be careful. Yang Yi replied, I will. Take care. Yang Yi turned around with the intent to leave. However, Elder Yuan suddenly flicked a jade slip over to Yang Yi. There's a person called Xianxia there. Yang Yi gazed at Elder Yuan and waited for more information. Elder Yuan glanced at Yang Yi. You're still not leaving? Yang Yi was slightly stunned, and then he came to an understanding. He bowed slightly and said, Take care. Yang Yi vanished into the sky once he finished speaking. Elder Yuan shook his head and smiled. Martial Emperor Academy, it's going to be lively once that kid gets there. He glanced at the surroundings and continued, it'll be soon. After he left Gracious Mountain, Yang Yi flew out of the weapon dimension on his sword. Once they found out that Yang Yi had left, countless people in the weapon dimension heaved sighs of relief. They hadn't taken Yang Yi seriously in the beginning, but after what had happened, they noticed that they'd far underestimated the new seal master of the slaughter line. He was a madman. As far as they were concerned, Yang Yi and Zhong Yi were madmen who completely ignored the consequences. Now the madman was gone. The weapon dimension could be in peace once more. Yang Yi shot through the distant starry sky on his sword. The Martial Emperor Academy. Since he arrived in the large universe, Yang Yi noticed that this world was boundless and filled with all sorts of things. All the races, the 4 top clans, the God race, the prehistoric civilization, and Martial Emperor Academy. The organizations in the large universe had a very complicated relationship, and he, Yang Yi, was clearly quite insignificant before them. Strength. Powerful strength. Yang Yi looked into the depths of the universe and resolve gradually appeared in his eyes. Work hard. Yang Yi sped up. At the same time, he immersed his consciousness into his body. The golden seal the weapon progenitor gave him was in front of him. It was the true weapon seal of the slaughter line. Yang Yi flicked a drop of blood into it, and then it instantly shot into his forehead. A short while later, some information had appeared in Yang Ye's mind. Imperial Crusher. No rank. An emperor among fist techniques. A single punch can crush the world. A long time passed before Yang Yi opened his eyes again. Imperial Crusher. He hadn't expected it to be a fist technique. Currently, all he'd learned were sword techniques. While he did know some fist techniques, they were far from being capable of keeping up with him. So, he never used fist techniques in battle, and he either used sword techniques or just punched. A fist technique. Imperial Crusher. A smile curled up on the corners of Yang Ye's mouth. Just as the weapon progenitor had said, it was very suitable for him. However, he didn't learn it immediately, because the prediction line had delayed him, or it should be said that he may be late. A day later, Yang Yi finally stopped traveling. At this moment, he was still in the starry sky, and he saw a city at the end of his field of vision. It stood within the starry sky while a huge blue barrier of light floated above it. Flying swords were swishing through the barrier from time to time. A solemn expression appeared on Yang Ye's face when he saw it, because he noticed that the weakest among those swords was at the sage rank. How rich! Yang Yi shook his head. If he were being honest, he felt like robbing them. Yang Yi restrained the unrealistic thoughts in his mind, and then he shot towards the city. When he arrived around 3 kilometers away from it, a sword suddenly shot down from the barrier of light above the city. A moment later, it appeared before Yang Yi, and its tip was pointed at Yang Ye's forehead. Yang Yi was stunned. Meanwhile, a young man suddenly appeared in front of him. The young man sized up Yang Yi and asked, "May I know who you are?" Yang Yi flicked a golden invitation to the young man. The weapon path's Yang Yi. "I'm here to report my arrival." The weapon path? The young man was stunned. He asked, "You're here to join the academy?" Yang Yi nodded. A weird expression appeared on the young man's face. "The opening ceremony is over. You're late." Yang Yi asked, "I can't go in?" The young man hesitated for a moment and replied, "Not really. Wait a minute. Let me ask about it." He turned around and left once he finished speaking. As for the sword in front of Yang Yi, it straightened itself and stopped pointing itself at Yang Yi. However, it didn't leave and just floated there. Obviously, it was watching Yang Yi. As he gazed at the sword, Yang Yi hesitated for a moment and patted his chest. A moment later, a small head emerged from there. Snowy blinked, and then glanced at the surroundings. In the end, she gazed at Yang Yi. Yang Yi rubbed her little head and pointed at the sword. "A treasure!" Snowy glanced at it, and then her eyes lit up slightly. She nodded to indicate that she thought so too. Yang Yi spoke softly. "Trick it. Talk with it and ask it to come with us. All right?" Snowy blinked, gazed at the sword, and then started waving her claws about. A short while passed before the sword trembled in response. Some time passed before Snowy gazed at Yang Yi, and then she pointed at the white barrier of light in the sky. Yang Yi glanced at it. The sword meant that it couldn't leave, and it had to stay on duty. That was roughly what it meant. Yang Yi hesitated for a moment and said, "Then ask it when it isn't on duty?" Snowy gazed at the sword and started communicating with it. Just like that, Yang Yi figured out what the sword was saying after Snowy relayed it to him. It was free at night. Yang Yi wanted to say more to it, but a middle-aged man suddenly appeared not too far away from Yang Yi. Yang Yi gazed at the middle-aged man, and the latter sized him up and asked, "Why didn't you come earlier?" Yang Yi replied, "I was delayed due to certain reasons." The middle-aged man nodded. "I understand." Yang Yi heaved a sigh of relief in his heart. So the academy isn't that difficult to deal with. Suddenly, the middle-aged man added, "Go back to where you came from. If you're still here 15 minutes from now, the swords will kill you." Yang Yi was stunned speechless. Yang Yi seemed visibly embarrassed. He was about to speak when the middle-aged man turned around and left. Yang Yi looked off into the distance and was stunned on the spot. Am I supposed to leave just like this? Suddenly, the young man from before appeared once more in front of Yang Yi. He sized up Yang Yi and said, "Brother, you're really bold to have dared to be late. Luckily, you haven't joined the academy. Otherwise, you'd definitely suffer for acting like this." Yang Yi laughed bitterly. "It can't be helped. I was delayed due to certain reasons." The young man hesitated for a moment and said, "Actually, you still have a chance." "Huh?" Yang Yi gazed at the young man. "What chance?" The young man explained, "There's a library in the academy, and it's called the Worlds. Now it's recruiting librarians. So you can give it a chance. Once 5 years pass and the academy is recruiting again, you can apply to join the academy." "A librarian?" Yang Yi had quite a strange expression on his face. "He wants me to be a librarian?" The young man nodded. "It's a very simple job. You just record who borrowed what, and then go look for those people who haven't returned their books on time. It's really very simple. What do you think?" Yang Yi frowned slightly. He was about to refuse, but the young man added, "Brother, just think about it. If you leave now, what would those who back you think? I think that getting an invitation was probably not easy for them, right? How disappointed would they be if you leave now?" Yang Yi thought for a moment. True, if I go back now, it would definitely be embarrassing. After all, Zhong Yi had gone to great lengths to get him the admission letter. Meanwhile, the young man hurriedly added, "If you work in the library and do well to the point that an instructor likes you, then perhaps you'll be able to immediately join the academy." "True." Yang Yi thought for a while before he nodded. As far as he was concerned, getting into the academy's grounds for now was the most important. A wisp of happiness flashed through the young man's eyes when he saw Yang Yi nod, but it vanished in an instant. The young man hurriedly said, "Brother, please come with me." He hurriedly led the way once he finished speaking. Yang Yi glanced at the young man and just followed him. Yang Yi followed the young man and arrived safely before the city's entrance. There were 3 large black words above the entrance: Martial Emperor City. Martial Emperor City? Yang Yi sized up the city. It wasn't huge and could only accommodate around 100,000 people. Once they entered the city, Yang Yi noticed that there weren't many people in the city. Yang Yi gazed at the young man. "Brother Qin Lang, who are they?" Yang Yi had gotten to know the young man's name while they chatted earlier. Qin Lang smiled. "Most of them are the family of students and instructors. As for some others, they are outsiders, but they are no ordinary outsiders. Most of them are special people. For example, formation experts, talisman experts, equipment refinement experts. In short, those allowed into Martial Emperor City are no ordinary people." Yang Yi fell silent. He glanced at the city, and he knew that it was no ordinary city. Meanwhile, Qin Lang suddenly said, "This is Martial Emperor Academy." Yang Yi looked up and was stunned. He gazed at Qin Lang. "Are you sure?" Yang Yi was shocked because the entrance to the academy was truly too ordinary. It was a bamboo door, and there were 3 words on it: Martial Emperor Academy. Yang Yi hadn't looked carefully behind the bamboo door yet. Qin Lang smiled. My reaction was just like yours. Come on, you'll get used to it. Qin Lang entered once he finished speaking. The scene before Yang Ye's eyes instantly changed once he passed through the bamboo door. A mountain range. At this moment they were in a boundless mountain range, and it simply seemed endless. Let's go. Qin Lang smiled and waved his hand. In an instant, a ray of light appeared beneath his feet, and then he vanished into the distance. Yang Yi immediately followed him. A short while later, Yang Yi stopped. There were golden buildings not too far ahead, and from this angle it seemed like the buildings and mountains formed the Big Dipper. The Big Dipper Formation. Meanwhile, Qin Lang smiled. It's extremely powerful. I heard that mysterious spirits are being held beneath each of the 7 peaks. Unfortunately, I've never had the chance to see those spirits. Yang Yi was puzzled. Why? Qin Lang smiled. Because no one dares to cause trouble here. Qin Lang sped up once he finished speaking. Yang Yi glanced at the mountains and followed Qin Lang. Qin Lang didn't take Yang Yi to any of the 7 peaks, and he led Yang Yi to a smaller mountain at a corner. It wasn't very far from the 7 main peaks, and it was one of the other mountains in the mountain range. The 7 peaks were the main peaks, and there were countless other mountains surrounding them. There was a black tower on this mountain, and light coiled around its top. Qin Lang led Yang Yi to the black tower and said, This is the world's, our academy's library. There are countless ancient books in it, and they have records of all kinds of strange and miraculous things. It can be said that it's the most complete library in our universe. Yang Yi asked, All of them are available to everyone? Of course not. Qin Lang grinned. It has 4 levels, and every single level contains different records. The higher level has the most ancient and rarest records. As for entering the library to read or borrow books, it requires student points. Yang Yi was puzzled. Student points? Qin Lang had a solemn expression on his face. Student points are linked to every student's fate in the academy. There are no limits to student points, and you can earn them through monthly tests, like written tests and combat tests. Besides that, you can gain them from missions. However, while there are no upper limits, there is a lower limit. Every 6 months, the academy will expel all students who don't possess enough student points. If a student doesn't have 90 points when the time comes, that student will be immediately expelled. He spoke bitterly at this point. Just being expelled isn't that bad. But it doesn't end there. The names of every expelled student will be recorded on the Pillar of Shame on Martial Mountain. Sigh. It's such an embarrassment. Not only to the person, but to that person's clan and organization. Because information about the person like the name, clan, organization, etc. are recorded too. Anyway, it's horrible. Yang Yi smiled. He felt that these rules were quite interesting, and it was capable of really motivating the students to work hard. Meanwhile, Qin Lang said, Brother Yang, come with me. I'll introduce you to everything. As he spoke, he led Yang Yi to the first level of worlds. There was a small stone table at the entrance, and a thick black scroll was on the table. Qin Lang explained, Brother Yang, I'll go report your name to the higher-ups later, and then you'll be a librarian. Librarians are compensated, and you'll get 5 student points every month. You can use them to exchange for a lot of things. It can be said that so long as you possess enough student points, even sage rank treasures and techniques, or even treasures and techniques above the sage rank can be yours. However, most people aren't able to afford them. As soon as he finished speaking, Qin Lang didn't wait for Yang Ye's reply and continued, Your job is very simple. It's to record the names of those who come to borrow books or read them. 30 points for the first level, 60 points for the... In short, everything is recorded in detail within the black scroll before you. You just have to work according to the rules. Remember that you should never offend anyone because you're just a trainee now, so you aren't protected by the academy. However, you'll be acknowledged by the academy in 2 weeks. At that time, no one will dare to act against you for no reason. Yang Yi thought for a moment and said, Brother Qin Lang, the librarian before me, was it you? Qin Lang's face stiffened, and then he nodded. I knew it. Yang Yi glanced at Qin Lang. Brother Qin Lang, where do you plan to go now? Qin Lang chuckled. I've been working here for 3 years. Coupled with some missions I've completed, I've accumulated some student points, and they are sufficient for me to remove my name from the pillar of shame. Yang Yi was astounded. You? Qin Lang nodded. I was a student of the academy, but due to certain reasons, I didn't have sufficient points and was expelled. However, I didn't leave and I found a job here instead. Or I should say that I found many jobs, like patrolling the area outside the academy. You encountered me earlier because I was on patrol. He took a deep breath and continued. Now, I have sufficient points. Once I remove my name from that pillar, I plan to cultivate behind closed doors for some time, and then take the exam to join the academy again. Men should stand back up where they fall, right? Yang Yi smiled and nodded. I support you. Qin Lang roared with laughter and flicked a car onto the table before Yang Yi. There are 5 points in there. Take it as a gift from me. Don't refuse because it won't be long before you realize how helpful those 5 points are to you. Brother Yang, see you. He vanished into the distance once he finished speaking. Yang Yi smiled, shook his head, and looked towards the side. The worlds, a librarian. Yang Yi sized up the surroundings. It was empty. He saw nothing. Actually, some small worlds were hidden here, and it was where those books resided. As for the black scroll in front of him, it was the key to the library. However, he didn't have any authority. When others came to read or borrow books, he just had to use the key to open the entrance to the library. To make it sound nicer, it was the job of a librarian. To be blunt, it was no different from an odd job. However, Yang Yi didn't mind all of that. As far as he was concerned, he just wanted to get some points. Because he wanted to read the books in the library, especially the 4th level. Reading the books there required 3,000 points. Moreover, only that number of points only gave a person 15 minutes to read there. If one wanted to borrow a book from the 4th level, it required 5,000 points. Moreover, it had to be returned in a day. But he was only getting 5 points per month. Obviously, he had to get points through other means. Suddenly, Yang Yi looked out of the tower. 2 rays of light descended from the sky, and a man and a woman appeared before Yang Yi. They were probably students of the academy, but Yang Yi was surprised because they were only at the No-Dao realm just like him. A short while later, they arrived in front of Yang Yi. The man sized up Yang Yi and said, New here. Yang Yi nodded. The man nodded slightly and flicked a silver card to Yang Yi. We want to enter the 2nd level for 15 minutes. Yang Yi quickly glanced at the black scroll before him, and then he lightly swiped the man's card against the scroll. A moment later, a ray of silver light flickered on the card. Yang Yi passed it back to the man. The man didn't say anything and just intended to enter with the woman. However, Yang Yi hurriedly stopped them. Only one of you can go in. The man had only paid for a single person. So, if the woman followed him in, it would be fraud. If it was discovered, both of them may be just punished lightly, but he would definitely suffer severe punishment. The man frowned when he heard Yang Yi. I've paid the student points. Yang Yi replied. I know, but you only paid for one person. The man looked Yang Yi in the eyes. Where's Qin Lang? Yang Yi shook his head. I don't know. Why? 2 people can go in with a single person's student points if he's in charge. The man wanted to say more, but the woman flicked a silver card to Yang Yi. Yang Yi didn't say a word. He just swiped it and returned it to her. She glanced at him and said, Want to make a bet? Yang Yi was puzzled. Huh. She walked over to him. You won't live more than 3 days from now. Will you accept this bet? I won't live for more than 3 days? Yang Yi was stunned and asked, Why? She replied, No reason. I just bet you won't live for more than 3 days. Don't worry, we won't do it now. So, do you agree? Yang Yi glanced at her and said, Since you're so confident, then let's do it. Give me 100 student points if I'm still alive in 3 days. All right? 100 points were a huge number of points. Their expressions changed when they heard Yang Yi, and the woman smiled. All right, we'll wait and see. She turned around and entered the 1st level once she finished speaking. The man glanced at Yang Yi. You brought this upon yourself. He turned around and followed her. Yang Yi shook his head and smiled. He walked out of the library and soared up slowly into the sky. It didn't take long for him to arrive high above, and he looked down at the ground below. This mountain had a single building, the world's library. A forest surrounded the library. In the beginning, Yang Yi felt that the forest was just ordinary, but it didn't take long for him to notice that energy was fluctuating through the forest. Another formation. Yang Yi moved his gaze to the library down below. While it seemed to be empty, Yang Yi was sure that if he dared to misuse his position, then he would be discovered immediately. Meanwhile, Yang Yi restrained his thoughts and returned to the ground. At the same time, the man and woman walked outside. Yang Yi glanced at them, and then ignored them and returned to his table. As far as Yang Yi was concerned, he would play with them if he was happy, but if he wasn't, then he had no time to waste on them. Being ignored by Yang Yi caused their faces to fall. The man walked over to Yang Yi. Now, I've changed my mind. Add me into the bet between you and young Miss Meng Yin, alright? You'll definitely agree because if you survive 3 days, you'll get another 100 student points for nothing. How could you possibly refuse that, right? Yang Yi thought for a moment and said, How does this benefit you? The man smiled. It doesn't. I just think it's fun. Alright? Yang Yi shook his head. I'm quite disappointed in Martial Emperor Academy. I thought experts would be hiding everywhere here, and it would be a place I have to be cautious in. But now it seems like it isn't much different to the world outside. It's full of weaklings. The man's face instantly became icy cold. What? You want to die right now? He slowly clenched his right hand as he spoke. Meanwhile, the woman, Meng Yin, spoke abruptly. Brother Gao Yu, why make a fuss about things with someone like him? If you kill him, while the academy won't expel you, you won't be able to avoid being confined to a room. Moreover, the points you've accumulated with great difficulty may be taken completely. As she spoke, she glanced at Yang Yi and continued. Killing you will dirty my hands, and that's the only reason why you're still alive. Yang Yi shook his head. A senior of mine told me to keep a low profile here, and I felt that I should do that too. But now it seems like there's no need for that. The people here flaunt their strength much more than I do. As soon as he finished speaking, Yang Yi slowly clenched his right fist. Suddenly, an old man appeared not too far away from them. Meng Yin and Gao Yu's faces changed slightly upon catching sight of the old man, and then they bowed respectfully to him before leaving. They were extremely swift and seemed like they were fleeing. Yang Yi was stunned. He gazed at the old man. Who is this old man? Meanwhile, the old man sized up Yang Yi and flicked a golden card to Yang Yi. The second level. Yang Yi nodded and then he swiped the card. The old man turned around and entered the tower. It only took a moment for the old man's figure to vanish. Meanwhile, a delicate voice resounded from not too far away. You're the new librarian? Yang Yi turned to look, and he saw a woman in a violet dress was looking at him. She seemed to be around the age of 15 or 16. While she seemed quite young, she was extremely gorgeous to the point that just a glance at her would imprint her looks in a person's heart. Yang Yi glanced at her and nodded. Yes. A smile curled up on the corners of her mouth, and her eyes curved into 2 crescents. Let's discuss something, all right? Yang Yi smiled. What is it? She walked over to Yang Yi and grinned. Air. I want to take a look at the 3rd level, but I don't have points. She revealed a bitter and pitiable expression when she spoke up to this point. Yang Yi wasn't affected by it at all. You can go earn them. There are many ways to earn them, she replied. But it's really slow. Yang Yi shrugged. I can't help with that. After all, I'm really poor too. She blinked. Why don't you just let me in, all right? No. Yang Yi refused decisively. Even though he was the librarian here, it was just a position that had no authority. He had nothing to do with the books in the library. She puckered her lips and replied, Fine. Yang Yi thought she would leave, but she actually swaggered off towards the library. She ignored him. Yang Yi would naturally not let her enter the tower. Yang Yi suddenly appeared in front of her when she was about to enter, and then he smiled. Little sister, you aren't thinking about entering by force, right? Her brilliant smile still remained on her face as she replied, That's exactly what I'm planning. Yang Ye's smile remained on his face. Then why don't you give it a try? She suddenly stretched out her hand and tapped it against Yang Ye's chest. In the beginning, Yang Yi was indifferent to it, but his expression changed drastically just a moment later. It was because his chest had cracked open. Yang Yi hurriedly retreated around 10 steps back. However, her finger was still against his chest. Yang Ye's chest started to crack more and more swiftly, and blood was seeping out. She gazed at him while a smile still remained on her face, but it seemed quite ghastly right now. Suddenly, Yang Yi slammed a punch forward. A wisp of surprise flashed through her eyes, and she slapped her other palm against Yang Ye's fist. Bam! An explosion resounded, and she was blasted around 300 m away. She glanced at her palm, and then looked up at Yang Yi. Wow! You're not ordinary. Come on, let's continue. Suddenly, a sword pressed against her forehead. She was stunned on the spot. Yang Yi spoke indifferently. You've wasted too much of my time and energy. I think you should compensate me for that. Yes, 100 points will be enough. Huh? You don't want to? Hiss! The sword entered her forehead slightly, and a drop of blood seeped out and flowed down slowly. Earlier, Yang Yi had been thinking about how he should earn points, but he hadn't thought of anything until now. He decided to take up an old profession of his, stealing from the rich. A bead of blood slowly rolled down her nose. In the end, it stopped on her upper lip. At the same time, she suddenly stretched out her tongue and licked it. It was quite a seductive move, and it was scary as well, because there was an indescribably strange smile on her face. However, Yang Ye's face was calm and wasn't affected by it at all. He knew that she wasn't ordinary, but Yang Yi was someone who'd experienced all sorts of things in life. What did he ever fear? Actually, he did fear some things, like the evil treasure. It really gave him quite the headache. Meanwhile, the woman smiled. Big brother, your attack was really fast. I wasn't even able to react. However, it was because I didn't expect you to be so fast. If I was prepared, then What? Yang Yi suddenly interrupted her and said, Hurry up, give me 100 points, and I'll let you prepare yourself before we fight. However, if you lose, you'll have to give me another 100 points. Her face stiffened. Are you a bandit? Yang Yi replied indifferently. Of course not. Do I look like one? I'm just taking from the rich to give to the poor. Look, I'm so poor, so shouldn't you donate a little to me? She blinked and said, So you can even seek donations when you're poor? Yang Yi nodded. So are you going to give it to me or not? As soon as he finished speaking, he moved his right hand slightly, and another bead of blood rolled down the woman's face. She gazed at him for a long time, and then she flicked a silver card at Yang Yi. There are 300 points in there. Big brother, do you dare to take them? Yang Yi picked up the card and said, Give me another one of these cards. She did as he told her and gave Yang Yi another card. Yang Yi swiped the cards against each other, and then he passed one of them to her. A person's word should always be kept. I said I'd take 100 points, so I did. Now you can leave. Yang Yi lowered his sword once he finished speaking. Suddenly, she stretched her hand forward and tried to grab Yang Ye's throat. Meanwhile, Yang Yi raised his hand and swung his sword down. Bang! The woman was blasted over 300 m away. As soon as she stopped herself, the ground below her feet shook violently. Actually, it should be said that the entire mountain trembled violently, and this clearly displayed how terrifying Yang Ye's attack was. The woman glanced at her hand. It was covered in blood. She looked up at Yang Yi and said, Amazing! She was about to attack again, but Yang Yi raised his hand slightly, and a sword appeared on his palm. At this moment, rays of light coiled around Yang Yi, and a powerful aura of the sword slammed down upon her. However, he controlled it so that it only enveloped her and didn't leak to the world outside. Otherwise, it would definitely alarm the academy. The woman's face stiffened when Xianxia's aura enveloped her, and a short while passed before she suddenly relaxed her tightly clenched fists. She spoke with dejection. So I'm so weak. I can't even defeat a librarian. Xiangyi suddenly lowered his sword and spoke indifferently. You're not weak. He turned around and walked towards the tower. Then why? Her voice suddenly came from behind him. It's because I'm too strong. As soon as he finished speaking, Yang Yi was already behind the stone table with his eyes closed. He seemed like he'd gone to sleep. The woman was stunned for quite some time. Suddenly, she ran over to Yang Yi and slapped a silver card on the table. Teach me how to use the sword. All right? This is my tuition fee. There are 500 points there. Yang Yi opened his eyes and gazed at her. Why do you want to train in the sword? She replied, because it's strong. I've been training in the martial Tao for so long, but I'm no match for you. Since that's the case, isn't it better to train in the sword Tao? Yang Yi was quite the headache when he heard this. You can't defeat me, so you want to learn the sword. So what if you can't defeat someone else in the future? What if that person uses the saber? Are you going to train in the saber then? She replied with a question. Can't I? Yang Yi was stunned speechless. Meanwhile, she said, in any case, I, Li Shui, will only train in what's strong. She placed her hands on the stone table and looked Yang Yi in the eyes. Is my tuition fee too low? It's fine. Just tell me a number, and I'll go trick. Oh no, I meant I'll go earn it. She blushed slightly when she spoke up to this point, but it didn't take long for her to recover. Yang Yi shook his head. I refuse. Why? She was slightly angry, but as soon as she remembered that she was no match for the man who stood in front of her, her anger couldn't help but dwindle. Why? Yang Yi replied, I only know how to kill. I don't know how to teach. Her eyes lit up. Kill but not teach. Amazing. Yang Yi glanced at her and said, what did you do when you hit my chest earlier? That attack of hers had almost shattered his body. She smiled. It's amazing, right? That was my unique ultimate move. I converge my energy into a single point, and it can destroy everything around it. Right? I can't tell you more. It's a secret. Yang Yi nodded. It's very good, but your physical strength is a little weak. Bam! Suddenly, she slapped her palms down against the stone table, and she roared angrily. You said I'm weak. Suddenly, a sword appeared before her neck. Can you talk properly? She blinked, and then smiled with embarrassment. I got excited. I got a little excited. Yang Yi lowered his sword and said, You think your body isn't weak? Of course. Li Shui hurriedly said. In the academy, or at least in our class, my physical strength is the strongest. Yang Yi spoke indifferently. Then how about we make a bet? I'll fight you with physical strength and won't use my sword. If I win, you'll give me 100 points. All right? Li Shui asked. You really won't use your sword? Yang Yi nodded. Li Shui suddenly asked. But what if you lose? Yang Yi replied. I'll give you 100 points as well. Li Shui muttered. But that's mine. Yang Yi gazed at her. She hurriedly said, All right, let's compete in physical strength. But how will we compete? Yang Yi replied, You attack me, and I won't use the sword. It's just that simple. Li Shui agreed. All right. As soon as she finished, she was about to attack him. However, Yang Yi glared at her. Go outside. Li Shui smiled with embarrassment and went outside with Yang Yi. She was quite impatient, so she immediately charged at Yang Yi and slammed a punch at him. Even though Li Shui had a petite figure, her strength was quite shocking, and it even carried a wave of pressure. However, her strength seemed quite weak to a professional body cultivator like Yang Yi. Yang Yi slammed his fist forward. Bang! The pressure that came from Li Shui's fist instantly vanished without a trace, and Li Shui herself was blasted backwards repeatedly. She glanced at her fist while standing far away from Yang Yi, and then she gazed at Yang Yi. Why? Yang Yi asked. Do you still want to continue? Li Shui fell silent for a moment. Suddenly, she sat on the ground. wrapped her arms around her legs, and seemed like life had no meaning to her. Xianxia walked over to her and said, "Are you feeling really useless from losing to me?" She looked up at Xianxia while tears could be seen welling up in her eyes. Xianxia shook his head. "I really don't know how you've gotten this far when you're acting like this from the slightest setback." She immediately stood up. She wanted to say something, but Xianxia shook his head. "Give me the points and leave." "Humph." Li Shuishui flickered her card to Xianxia, and she left after Xianxia took 100 points from her. "I'll be back." Li Shuishui's voice resounded from behind Xianxia. Xianxia ignored her. He just sat down on his stone chair and closed his eyes. Li Shuishui stomped her feet when she saw Xianxia actually ignore her. In the end, she glared angrily at him and vanished into the sky. Once she left, the old man from before walked out. He glanced at Xianxia while he passed by. Meanwhile, Xianxia opened his eyes and nodded slightly to the old man. What a waste of talent! As soon as he finished speaking, he left the library and vanished into the sky. Xianxia shrugged and closed his eyes again. In the primordial pagoda, his current objective was to learn the Imperial Crusher. Even though it was bad to learn too much, Xianxia didn't know many techniques right now. Especially physical combat techniques, the Imperial Crusher was the only technique he owned. His physical strength was sufficiently strong, so if he used this fist technique, it would undoubtedly grow even stronger. Just like that, time trickled by, and 2 weeks passed in the blink of an eye. However, only 2 days had passed in the outside world. During these 2 days, there had been people who came to borrow and read in the library, but nothing special occurred. On the 3rd day, a man and a woman appeared outside the tower. It was Meng Yin and Gao Yu whom Xianxia had made a bet with the other day. Xianxia had clearly noticed their arrival, and he opened his eyes to look at them. He saw a cold smile on both their faces. Xianxia thought for a moment, and then he stood up and started walking slowly in their direction. "Do both of you have an inflated sense of strength, or am I Xianxia, not holding the blade? Oh wait, I mean the sword." Gao Yu was stunned when he heard Xianxia. He was about to speak when Xianxia suddenly stopped and looked up at the sky. 2 rays of light shot down from high above. A short while later, a woman in a green dress appeared before them, and there was another woman in a violet dress by her side. The woman was Li Shuishui. Xianxia frowned slightly upon seeing her. "What's that annoying girl doing here?" Meng Yin and Gao Yu's expressions changed slightly at the sight of them. They hurriedly went over, and Gao Yu smiled. "Senior sisters, are you here to read too?" The woman in a green dress nodded slightly with quite a cold expression on her face. Li Shuishui glanced at them and smiled. "What? You're here to read too?" Gao Yu shook his head slightly. He glanced at Xianxia and said, "We're here to get even with him." "Get even with him?" Li Shuishui was stunned and asked curiously, "Why?" Gao Yu grinned. "It's nothing. We just made a bet with this new librarian a few days ago. We bet that he won't live more than 3 days, and today's the 3rd day. So, we're here to deal with that." Li Shuishui blinked and said, "You mean both of you are here to kill him?" Gao Yu shook his head slightly. "Killing costs student points." He gazed at Xianxia and continued, "Help us save our points and kill yourself, all right? You'll be able to avoid suffering too." Xianxia glanced at them and then he gazed at Li Shuishui. "I have a question. Is the cost of killing in this damnable place just some student points?" Li Shuishui smiled. "You can't kill them. If you do, it isn't just a few student points that you'll lose, you'll be severely punished as well. Because you're not a student of the academy. But if they kill you, they can resolve the matter with student points." Xianxia couldn't help but frown when he heard this. Suddenly, Li Shuishui added, "But if you leave this place and go somewhere else, in other words, if you leave the academy, then the academy won't interfere. Because the academy has stated that if a student goes out of the academy and gets killed, it's because the student lacks strength and deserves to die." "Looks like you're very confident in yourself." Suddenly, Gao Yu smiled. "Why don't we go out and fight to the death?" Xianxia glanced at them and said, "I really don't understand. The conflict between us is quite minor, so why do you have to try and kill me?" As far as he was concerned, they should have received a good education, so their mentality and intelligence were definitely not inferior. Gao Yu smiled. Are you begging for mercy? Yang Yi shook his head. Talking to you makes me feel like you're making me as stupid as you. Gao Yu's face became icy cold. Cultivators should eliminate anything that makes them feel unhappy. You made us unhappy that day, so it may create inner demons for us one day. In order to prevent that, we naturally have to eliminate you. Yang Yi chuckled. I see. If that's the case, let's go. Yang Yi gazed at Li Shui. Help me take care of the library, all right? She blinked. Do I get anything from doing that? Yang Yi shook his head. No. He walked into the library and brought Xianxia out of the pagoda. He rubbed her head and said, Help me take care of this place. All right? She spoke softly. Can Snowy accompany me? Of course she couldn't. After all, that evil treasure still had its eyes on him. Yang Yi was about to speak when Xianxia spoke softly. How long will it take you to get back? Yang Yi smiled. A short while. She nodded. Okay. Yang Yi suddenly asked, Aren't you afraid? She looked up at Yang Yi. Afraid of what? Yang Yi thought for a moment and smiled. Nothing. He withdrew a sword, the sword supreme, and placed it on the stone table. Keep this to protect yourself. Xianxia didn't refuse and nodded. All right. Yang Yi rubbed her head and walked out of the tower. He naturally wasn't worried about Xianxia. She was extremely mysterious, and he had the feeling that even if he attacked her, he probably wouldn't be able to kill her. It was a very absurd feeling, because she seemed like an absolutely ordinary person. However, that was what made it extraordinary. Xianxia watched Yang Yi vanish into the sky. After that, she glanced at the sword on the stone table and tapped it lightly. It trembled slightly and seemed to be responding to her. Xianxia turned and glanced at the surroundings. Suddenly, a wave of powerful force appeared out of thin air and pushed her out of the tower. The world's library naturally had a spirit of its own. Otherwise, the academy would never just allow a single person to take care of it. Moreover, it wasn't just strong, so the academy was willing to let just a single person take care of it. But at this moment, the library clearly didn't welcome Xianxia's presence. Outside the tower, Xianxia stared at the library, and a short while passed before she sat on the ground. She put her arms around her knees and fell silent. Meanwhile, the Sword Supreme flew over to her and shook slightly. She looked up at the Sword Supreme and asked, Why do others hate me so much? The Sword Supreme shook to respond to her. A short while passed before Xianxia spoke softly. Is it because they're afraid of me? Yang Yi and the others left Martial Emperor City and arrived in the boundless starry sky. Dazzling stars filled the surroundings. They were like specks of sand in the ocean as they stood here. They were so tiny. Yang Yi gazed at Meng Yin and Gao Yu. Go on. You first. Gao Yu smiled. Otherwise, you may not have a chance. Yang Yi nodded. All right. As soon as he finished speaking, a sword started to float above his palm. It was judgment. Now, his cultivation had risen tremendously, so it wasn't that difficult for him to use judgment anymore. Once Yang Yi drew his sword, Li Shui's eyes lit up, and the woman by her side had a solemn expression on her face. She wasn't the only one. Gao Yu and Meng Yin had solemn expressions on their faces too. An expert's strength was evident once the expert made a move. At this instant, they stopped looking down on Yang Yi. But at this moment, Yang Ye's sword vanished. A ray of light which was thin as a hair flashed through space. Gao Yu's hairs were standing on end. And then his profound energy surged madly within him. A ray of dazzling light swept out from within him. But as soon as it came into contact with the ray of light, a hole was instantly sliced open in it. Hiss! The sound of space being torn open resounded. A few moments later, the surroundings returned to calm. Everyone gazed at Gao Yu, and the latter gazed at Yang Yi. You? He hadn't even finished speaking before his body cracked open like a shattered ceramic pot, and he instantly transformed into pieces that shot off into space. Meng Yin's face instantly turned pale at the sight of this. Meanwhile, Li Shui used her elbow to bump the woman on her side. Big sis, will you? What do you think? I wasn't lying, right? The woman glanced at Li Shuai and remained silent. Meanwhile, Yang Yi gazed at Meng Yin, and the latter said, I admit defeat. Admit defeat? Yang Yi was stunned and said, Aren't you worried about your mental state? What if it causes inner demons? Meng Yin glanced at Yang Yi and said, You're formidable and we were ignorant. We made a big deal out of nothing, so please forget it ever happened. Yang Yi smiled. In the beginning, you thought I was easy to kill, so a few words of mine became a troubling thing to you, and it would become inner demons if you didn't kill me. Yet now that I'm stronger than you, there's no such thing. Meng Yin fell silent. Meanwhile, Yang Yi shook his head. In the end, it was all because of strength. If you have sufficient strength, even if you slap a person or spit on a person, that person wouldn't be a problem. But if you don't have strength, even if you don't say a word, someone may kill you because they just don't like seeing you. As they say, the strong do as they please, and the weak accept their fate. Yang Yi gazed at Meng Yin when he spoke up to this point, and the latter transformed into a ray of light that vanished into the distance. It only took an instant for her to enter Martial Emperor City. Meanwhile, Li Shuai suddenly asked, Why didn't you stop her? Yang Yi smiled. Her death doesn't change anything for me. Moreover, too much killing will lead to addiction. I'm afraid that I'll get addicted. Li Shuai's face stiffened. Aren't you afraid that she'll take revenge? Yang Yi smiled. Why don't you dare to take revenge? Li Shuai's face stiffened again. Why? It was simple. She was no match for Yang Yi. That was just one reason. The other reason was that there was no irreconcilable enmity between them. Since it could be just de-escalated, why wouldn't she do that? Meanwhile, Yang Yi snapped his finger, and a ring flew over to him. It was Gao Yu's spatial ring. Yang Yi didn't take a glance at it before putting it away, and then he turned around with the intent to leave. However, Li Shuai suddenly said, We're going to explore the secrets of a place. Do you want to come? No. Yang Yi turned around and walked away. Li Shuai suddenly shouted, There are Originite there. Yang Yi stopped. Originite. Yang Yi stopped and gazed at her. His ultimate goal here was Originite. Originite contained the techniques of the prehistoric civilization. While he had his own sword Dao, and he refused to take the path of another, learning from others was important. Perhaps there were geniuses in the world who made themselves, but Yang Yi wasn't one of them. He had to ceaselessly learn from the strong points of others to perfect himself. Li Shuai's lips curled into a smile when she saw Yang Yi stop, and she smiled like a sly little fox. She walked quickly over to Yang Yi and said, I knew you wouldn't be willing to stay as a librarian. Yang Yi said, Go on, tell me about it. Li Shuai naturally knew what Yang Yi meant, and she immediately smiled. There are two ways to get Originite. The first is to obtain it through the academy. There are some in the academy, but they require student points, and the amount required is simply capable of arousing despair in us. Because it costs 100,000 student points each. Based on my initial estimations, all the students in the entire academy may not have 100,000 points in total. Yang Yi gazed at her and waited for her to continue. She continued, The other way is to find Originite ourselves. Yang Yi asked, Where? She smiled, Prehistoric ruins. It's where the prehistoric civilization once resided, and it's most likely to contain Originite. However, it's very dangerous, extremely dangerous. It isn't even rare for a sage to fall there. Yang Yi fell silent. He was thinking. Meanwhile, Li Shuai added, So? Wanna try? Yang Yi replied, What would I do about the library? She smiled. That's easy. I'll help you find someone to take care of it. Yang Yi didn't hesitate to nod. All right, shall we go now? Li Shuai shook her head slightly. Big sis Wu and I have to get prepared. Oh right. Let me introduce both of you. This beauty by my side is Wu. She'll be going with us. Yang Yi gazed at her and nodded slightly. She glanced at Yang Yi and nodded slightly too. Li Shuai smiled. We'll meet again at this time tomorrow. As soon as she finished speaking, she vanished into the distance with Wu. Yang Yi glanced at the surroundings and vanished on the spot. So soon, a voice muttered softly. Yang Yi returned to the library, and he saw Xianxia outside it. A sword was floating by her side. Xianxia immediately ran over to Yang Yi when she saw him, and then she looked up at him and asked, "Are you leaving?" Yang Yi was quite surprised. "How did you know?" Xianxia didn't speak and just gazed at Yang Yi. Yang Yi rubbed her little head. "For a while. What about me?" Xianxia stared at him without blinking, and she quietly clenched her fists. Obviously, she was quite nervous. Yang Yi smiled. "I'll be taking you along, of course." He walked over to the stone table and sat down once he finished speaking. Xianxia's fists relaxed, and a trace of an imperceptible smile appeared on her face. Yang Yi withdrew the spatial ring he'd gotten from Gao Yu and glanced through it. There were all sorts of things in it, but besides student points, there was nothing else that could catch his attention. Gao Yu had a total of 230 points. Yang Yi was quite disappointed because it was really quite little. However, it was better with nothing. Combined with the points he'd gained from Li Shueishui, he had over 300 now. But an originite was 100,000 points. Yang Yi shook his head. Obviously, the academy wouldn't allow someone to get an originite that easily. Yang Yi restrained his thoughts and gazed at Xianxia, who was looking at him while lying on his table. He smiled. "What is it?" Xianxia thought for a moment and replied, "Why aren't you afraid of me?" Yang Yi smiled. "Why should I be afraid of you?" Xianxia wanted to say something, but Yang Yi rubbed her head. "Xianxia, I know you're not ordinary, but remember that we don't have to care about what others think in this world. So long as you have a clear conscience, then even if the world hates us, so what? In any case, we aren't relying on them to live." Xianxia seemed to be thinking about Yang Yi's words as she laid there. Yang Yi didn't say anything else and just immersed his mind into the primordial pagoda. Time passed very quickly. The next day, Yang Yi left the library. In the starry sky, Yang Yi met Li Shueishui and Wei Yu. Wei Yu smiled. "How punctual." Yang Yi nodded. "Let's go." They vanished into the distance. Li Shueishui spoke as they traveled. "There are 7 known prehistoric ruins, and we can't go to 6 of them." Yang Yi was quite puzzled. "Why?" Li Shueishui smiled. "Because they are under the control of the 4 paths and some other mysterious forces. Of course, our academy is among them. However, we can't enter the ruins that belong to the academy. It can only be accessed at certain special times and with sufficient student points." Yang Yi asked, "Why hasn't anyone taken the final ruins?" Li Shueishui smiled. "If they take everything and refuse to give others even a bit, they don't want to go too far. So they decided to keep the last one open to everyone. However, they emptied out the ruins before they did that." Yang Yi frowned. "Then why are we even going?" "To try our luck." Li Shueishui smiled. "To see if they missed anything. After all, some people did find originite there in the past." Yang Yi looked up into the depths of space. All resources are always in their hands. Fairness? It wasn't that this world was devoid of fairness, but the fairness was only limited to certain scopes. Suddenly, Li Shueishui said, "We've arrived." Yang Yi restrained his thoughts and looked over. There was a huge white planet there, and when looked at from this angle, it was covered in cracks and seemed like it was on the verge of shattering. Besides that, space was trembling incessantly around it, and it seemed very unstable. Besides that, Yang Yi saw some remains, the remains of planets. They didn't float off into space and were just floating silently around the white planet. Yang Yi spoke softly. "The prehistoric civilization really existed." "Of course." Li Shueishui spoke with certainty. "The universe is boundless, so how could we possibly be the only civilization? Moreover, I think that there were definitely more civilizations before the prehistoric civilization. However, no civilization is eternal." Yang Yi gazed at her. "Why?" "Because of greed." It wasn't Li Shueishui who gave him this answer, it was Xianxia who was within the pagoda. Mother said that every civilization is taking from the universe without holding back, and taking too much equals to destruction. Only destruction can lead to new life. Yang Yi was shocked, and he asked, Xianxia, are these your own thoughts? Or, Xianxia replied softly, Mother told me. Xianxia's mother. Hey, are you listening to me? Meanwhile, Li Shueishue's voice resounded in Yang Ye's ears. Yang Yi restrained his thoughts and gazed at her. Let's go! Li Shueishue gnashed her teeth in anger when she heard him. They sped up, and it didn't take long for them to enter the white plainer. Desolate. As soon as they descended to the ground, Yang Ye's first impression of it was that it was a desolate place. A gray sky that seemed like a storm was coming, just a few mountains within the scope of his vision, and extremely tall weeds all over the ground. Yang Yi gazed at Li Shueishue, and the latter gazed at Wuyu. Wuyu glanced at the surroundings and withdrew a disc. A treasure-seeking disc. Li Shueishue smiled and explained. It can locate treasures. Senior sister Wuyu used almost 1,000 student points to get it. A few of us combined our points together to get it. Meanwhile, Wuyu finally spoke. Everyone can only use it for a day in a month. Today just happens to be my turn. As she spoke, she tapped the disc, and it didn't take long for it to spin and point its black needle at Yang Yi. Yang Yi was speechless. Both Li Shueishue and Wuyu gazed at him. Tisk, tisk. Li Shueishue sized up Yang Yi. You definitely have a lot of treasures, huh? So you should be careful. Everyone here has something similar to see out treasures, so some may come looking for you. Yang Yi was about to speak when Wuyu's expression suddenly changed slightly. Someone's coming. Yang Yi frowned slightly. He glanced at the surroundings but didn't notice anyone. Let's go. Wuyu took Li Shueishue's hand and started fleeing. However, a green barrier of light suddenly rose up into the air around 30 m away from them, and it completely blocked off their way. After that, a woman in a green dress appeared before them. At the same time, a black-robed man suddenly appeared behind them. The black-robed man walked slowly in their direction. Students of Martial Emperor Academy. TSK, TSK. Such an unexpected gift. They were here to rob them. Yang Yi had instantly understood what was going on. They were about to be robbed. Li Shueishue laughed coldly. You know we're from the Martial Emperor Academy, yet you still dare to act against us. You're quite brave. Is the Martial Emperor Academy that great? The black-robed man laughed coldly. I must admit that it's extraordinary, but it doesn't represent that all of you are extraordinary. Moreover, based on my knowledge of the Academy, if its students suffer any mishaps in the outside world, the Academy won't interfere at all. I wonder if I'm right. Li Shueishue spoke coldly. Are you that confident? The black-robed man pointed at them and said, If I'm not wrong, you're in the Earth class at most, right? Yang Yi gazed at Li Shueishue. The Earth class. Li Shueishue explained. There's the Sky class, Earth class, Spirit class, and Mortal class in the Academy. Every single class is further divided into Group A, B, C, and D. Well, you and I are from Group B. Yang Yi spoke softly. I didn't know that. As he spoke, he looked up at the black-robed man and said, If I'm not wrong, you're here for Originite too. However, Originite is more far out of reach for the two of you, and robbing people works better, right? The black-robed man smiled. Yes, if luck gives me one, then I'll take it, but the people here... Suddenly, Yang Yi waved his hand. I'm not interested in wasting my breath with you. As soon as he finished speaking, a sword appeared above his palm, and then a ray of light flashed. At the moment a sword appeared above Yang Ye's palm, the black-robed man's expression had changed drastically, and there was an extremely solemn expression in his eyes. Meanwhile, a ray of cold light had arrived before him. Defend! Suddenly, a clear and melodious voice resounded, and then a thin green barrier of light appeared before the black-robed man's forehead. The tip of the sword stabbed against the barrier of light, causing it to sink in. However, it wasn't destroyed and even bounced Yang Ye's sword away. Yang Yi frowned and gazed at the woman. You're from the spirit race. The woman glanced at Yang Yi and remained silent, but vigilance covered her face. Yang Yi gazed at the black-robed man and was about to attack, but the black-robed man suddenly said, Wait! Yang Yi asked. What? The black-robed man suddenly asked. Are you Yang Yi? A wisp of surprise flashed through Yang Ye's eyes. How did you know? A trace of shock flashed through both the man and the woman's eyes when they heard Yang Yi admit it. The black-robed man laughed bitterly. So it really is you. We're from the spirit race. The spirit race. Yang Yi came to an understanding now. Besides the weapon path, he wasn't really famous in the other three paths, let alone Martial Emperor Academy. However, his reputation among the other races was huge. Did anyone among the other races not know Yang Yi? Meanwhile, the black-robed man cupped his fist at Yang Yi. We apologize for what just happened. Brother Yang, we hope you can let bygones be bygones. Li Shueishue's eyes were filled with bewilderment when she witnessed this. Isn't this a little too strange? She gazed at Yang Yi. Is he very famous among all the races? Yang Yi glanced at the black-robed man. While the black-robed man was apologizing, he seemed very vigilant and was afraid that Yang Yi would attack abruptly. Suddenly, the black-robed man added, I have a piece of information that Brother Yang may be interested in. There's a ruin over 100,000 kilometers away from here, and it's very likely for a Originite to be there. Li Shueishue suddenly asked, Then why haven't both of you gone there? The man laughed bitterly. Some people already have their eyes on that place, so going there without sufficient strength is no different than seeking death. He gazed at Yang Yi and continued, I'm not trying to draw disaster upon you, but your strength should be sufficient to get something out of it. Li Shueishue gazed at Yang Yi. Do you want to go? Yang Yi nodded. Let's go have a look. Li Shueishue pointed at the black-robed man and the woman. What about them? Yang Yi grinned. What do you want to do to them? She thought for a moment and replied, Up to you. Yang Yi smiled. Let's go. Kill them? If he used his full strength, he would naturally be able to accomplish that. However, he would definitely have to pay a price. Especially the woman in a green dress, her strength wasn't ordinary. So, it didn't benefit him to fight them to the death. Moreover, he didn't really trust Wei Yu and Li Shueishue, so he didn't want to expose too many of his trump cards before them. The black-robed man and the woman watched as Yang Yi and the others vanished into the distance. The black-robed man spoke solemnly. I didn't expect him to be here. The woman spoke softly. He has joined Martial Emperor Academy. The black-robed man laughed bitterly. Our patriarch told us not to offend that malevolent existence, but I didn't really take him seriously. Now I know that our patriarch was right. That fellow's strength is unfathomable. Luckily, I recognized him just now. Otherwise, we may be dead by now. She asked, Shall we go? The man shook his head. Of course we can't just go. Chaos is about to descend upon the world. We must try to get an Originite no matter what. Only an Originite can help our spirit race grow even stronger, and only then can we survive in the chaotic world that is about to come. The woman frowned slightly. Is a single Originite that powerful? The man replied solemnly. It isn't just an Originite, it's an inheritance from a greater civilization. Otherwise, the sages and those extremely old experts wouldn't attach such importance to the prehistoric ruins. He looked up at the sky and continued, Come on, let's go try our luck. They vanished on the spot once he finished speaking. Were you very famous in the past? Li Shueishue kept asking Yang Yi questions, causing him to have quite the headache. Li Shueishue asked another question. Why did you come to Martial Emperor Academy and take the insignificant position of a librarian? Yang Yi stopped, looked at Li Shueishue's eyes which were filled with curiosity, and then he said, It's my own personal business, all right? Yang Yi turned around and walked away once he finished speaking. He didn't have a good impression of Li Shueishue, and he even felt a little aversion instead. She hadn't held back at all when she attacked him that day, and any other ordinary person would have died that day. But she'd tried to take his life just for a small thing. Li Shueishue was livid when she saw Yang Yi act like that. She glared angrily at Yang Yi and said, You think you're so great? Wu Yu tugged Li Shueishue's arm gently and said, He's not a kind person. Don't get too close to him, and don't get into conflict with him. Li Shueishue grunted coldly. I don't want to get close to him. I was just curious. Will you spoke softly? Don't forget our objective. Li Shueishue's expression eased up quite a bit. Of course I remember. Let's go. An hour later they stopped. There was a huge circular building in front of Yang Yi and the others. It was round and extremely huge. It wasn't on the ground, it was floating in the air, and it seemed like an octopus. What the heck is that? Yang Yi frowned. Li Shueishue spoke softly, but she didn't sound very confident. The residence of people from the prehistoric civilization? Yang Yi suddenly looked towards the distance. There was a huge statue there. It was over 30 m tall, and it had its arms crossed while looking down slightly. Come. Let's go over and have a look. As soon as she finished speaking, Li Shueishue's figure shot forward. Yang Yi followed her, and it only took a moment for them to arrive before the huge statue. There was a round platform at the bottom of the statue, and it was holding up the entire statue. Besides that, it was covered in some strange symbols. Will you spoke softly? That should be their writing system. Yang Yi nodded and said, Are you able to read them? Li Shueishue rolled her eyes at Yang Yi. What do you think? Yang Yi ignored her and gazed at the giant statue. It looked slightly like a human, but it was absolutely not human. Because while it had the shape of a human, its nose, ears, and even hands and feet were different from humans. Is this how the people of the prehistoric civilization looked like? Yang Yi frowned slightly and felt quite curious and puzzled. He was curious about why such an advanced civilization vanished into the annals of history. Meanwhile, Li Shueishue suddenly said, Let's go in and have a look. Yang Yi was about to speak when he suddenly looked towards the side. A young man had suddenly appeared there, and he was looking at them with a strange grin on his face. His grin made all of them feel quite uncomfortable. It was like a hunter eyeing his prey. The man suddenly asked, Want to go in? Yang Yi nodded. Indeed. The man chuckled, and then he pointed at Li Shueishue and Wei Yu. Make them accompany me for a night, and I'll let all of you in. All right? Li Shueishue and Wei Yu's faces fell when they heard this. The man chuckled. So? Of course, I won't refuse if you want to be with me for 2 nights instead of 1. Haha. Suddenly, Li Shueishue pointed at Yang Yi. Do you know who he is? The man gazed at Yang Yi. Li Shueishue spoke in an extremely serious tone. He's Yang Yi, you know? He's Yang Yi. Yang Yi. The man frowned slightly. Who the fuck is that? I've never heard of him. Yang Yi was at a loss for words. Li Shueishue gazed at Yang Yi. He cursed you. Shut up. Yang Yi glared at her, and then he gazed at the young man. The young man was about to speak when Yang Yi vanished on the spot. The young man's expression changed slightly. He flipped his right palm and a spear appeared in his grasp before sweeping down at Yang Yi. Bang! An explosion resounded, and the young man was pushed over 300 m back. Once he stopped himself, he glanced at his slightly numb arm before looking up at Yang Yi and smiling fiercely. You have some ability? But... Suddenly, Yang Yi raised his hand and swung his sword. Bang! The young man was instantly blasted over 3 kilometers away. This time, as soon as he stopped himself, a sword was against his neck. The young man stared at Yang Yi. You? Yang Yi gazed at the young man and spoke casually. Do you know who Yang Yi is now? The young man suddenly smiled. You have some ability, but do you dare to kill me? I hiss. The young man's head flew up into the air before he could even finish speaking. Yang Yi lowered his sword. After that, he glanced at the bloody head rolling towards the side and shook his head. The facts prove that I do dare. Unfortunately, you aren't able to hear it. Yang Yi turned around and swung his sword as he spoke. Hiss! A ray of light flashed. Around 300 m away, the ray of light stopped, and it just stopped there like it was frozen in place. A moment later, a man in an embroidered robe appeared before them. The man glanced at the ray of light and said, Your sword moved as you wish. Amazing indeed. He gazed at Yang Yi and continued, There are few in Martial Emperor Academy who use the sword, and there are only 2 who are extremely strong. I just happen to know both of them, and you aren't any one of them. Yang Yi shook his head and looked towards the distance. We want to go in and have a look. You don't have an objection, right? The man looked Yang Yi in the eyes. What if I do? Isn't that simple to resolve? Yang Yi chuckled and then he vanished on the spot. At the same time, a ray of cold light appeared before the man's forehead. The man's eyes narrowed slightly, and he tapped his finger forward. It tapped against the tip of Yang Yi's sword, and it pushed Yang Yi and his sword backwards. However, Yang Yi twisted his right hand just a moment later. Bang! The man was blasted over 300 m back, and as soon as he stopped himself, another ray of light shot towards him. It was extremely swift and impossible to dodge, nor could he. Once he tried to dodge it, he would fall into a passive position in this battle. He restrained his thoughts and bent backwards slightly while stomping his right foot upwards. It kicked straight against Yang Yi's sword, causing Yang Yi's sword's stabbing motion to become an upward swipe. Meanwhile, Yang Yi suddenly released his sword and stomped his left foot down. He relied on the counterforce which came from the space below him to launch a kick at the man. He wasn't being vicious. It was merely because the man's nether regions were the best place to strike in the man's current posture. The man hadn't expected Yang Yi's reaction to be so swift, and he naturally didn't dare to let Yang Yi's foot kick his nether regions. He immediately stomped his foot down and swung his other foot at Yang Yi. Bang! The man was blasted away, and long rifts cracked open in the space beneath his feet, obviously displaying how terrifying Yang Yi's kick had been. Yang Yi didn't stop. He appeared in front of the man again. This time he didn't use his sword, and he just kicked at the man again. Bang! The space around them shook violently and seemed like an earthquake was running through it. The man's eyes narrowed slightly while ruthlessness flashed through his eyes. He suddenly formed a strange seal with both hands, and then a ray of light swept out from the seal. Bang! Yang Yi was blasted away. Yang Yi glanced at his palm. At this moment, the skin there had been scorched black like coal. Yang Yi looked up at the man, and he saw faint golden flames covering the man's hands. It hadn't been a ray of light but crimson gold flames that had hit Yang Yi. Yang Yi shook his head, and his hands had recovered to normal. The man's face fell at the sight of this. How did you do that? Yang Yi didn't say a word in response, and he just shot up into the sky, and then he transformed into a ray of light that shot down at the man. The man's eyes narrowed slightly, and flames burned in his eyes. A moment later, a pillar of fire shot up into the air. At the same time, crimson-red flames appeared around Yang Yi, making him seem like a descending meteor. Both flames slammed against each other. Boom! A wave of flames swept out, and the space there turned ethereal. Li Shui and Wu Yu hurriedly shot backwards, because even if they survived the powerful wave of flames, it would injure them. Both of those flames weren't ordinary. The sky had turned into an ocean of flames. No one noticed that the ocean of flames had enveloped the huge statue, but the statue was completely unharmed. The ocean of flames remained for an entire 15 minutes before vanishing. At this moment, Yang Yi and the man were still here. Based on their outward appearances, they were both fine. The man stared at Yang Yi. What are those flames? Yang Yi unfurled his fist, and there was a small flame floating there. A smile curled up on his face as he gazed at it. He hadn't used the divine inflame for a very long time. It wasn't that the divine inflame wasn't strong. It was because he'd placed all his attention on his physical body and sword Dao. A pure pursuit. Regardless of whether it was the sword Dao or the physical body, they stressed upon purity. So, he rarely relied on external sources of strength, including the divine wings that could drastically improve his speed. He didn't even use the mysterious black talisman he'd taken from the weapon path's prediction line. While he didn't use it, it didn't represent that he wouldn't. A moment later, a pair of black wings appeared behind Yang Yi, and Yang Yi's figure immediately started floating. The sage rank. The man's expression became quite unsightly. Meanwhile, Yang Yi's figure vanished. The man's expression changed drastically, and then a wave of powerful energy assaulted his face. It instantly caused the man's face to warp. Two balls of flames suddenly blazed within the man's eyes, and then a wave of flames swept out from him. Boom! An explosion reverberated. An instant later, the man was blasted away while Yang Yi was pushed back repeatedly as well. However, it didn't take long for Yang Yi to stop himself. Once he did, Yang Yi looked up at the man and was about to attack. However, another middle-aged man and beautiful woman in red clothes had appeared not too far away from him. They gazed at Yang Yi, and then a ray of red light and cold light instantly arrived in front of Yang Yi. Yang Yi clenched both his fists and slammed them forward. Bang! Bang! Yang Yi was pushed over 1 kilometer back. Once he stopped himself, he waved his right hand, and a sword appeared in his grasp. After that, he raised his right hand, and the tip of his sword started spinning rapidly against his palm. The middle-aged man and red-clothed woman seemed quite vigilant at this moment, and the space around them started to ripple. Obviously, they were accumulating strength. The battle would begin at any moment. Stop! Suddenly, a voice came from the side, and then a middle-aged man with a spear on his back appeared before them. The middle-aged man walked swiftly to Yang Yi, glanced at Yang Yi's sword, and said, "Young brother, you're probably here to enter that mysterious building and not to kill, right?" Yang Yi spoke indifferently. "I'm not here to kill, but others want to kill me." The middle-aged man nodded slightly, and then he gazed at the middle-aged man and woman in red clothes. "Brother Huang Nian, your son is fine, so this isn't necessary, right?" The middle-aged man glanced at the man in embroidered clothes. At this moment, he was still emanating faint flames, and his countenance was quite pale. However, his life wasn't in danger. He looked up at Yang Yi and was about to speak when the beautiful woman spoke abruptly. "Let it go? How can we?" She gazed at Yang Yi. "Hani, he injured my son. Yet you want me to let it go? What? It doesn't hurt because it wasn't your son." Hani frowned when he heard this. Meanwhile, the woman suddenly pointed at Yang Yi. "You want me to forget it? Sure. Tell him to sever both his arms as compensation, and I will. Otherwise all of you will die." Suddenly, Yang Yi started walking in their direction. "I plan to just let it go. After all, I don't want to waste time here. But now..." As he spoke, Yang Yi's face became quite vicious. "Now I just want to kill." A sword howl resounded. And Yang Yi's figure shot forward. He was already extremely swift, and coupled with the divine wings, his speed was so swift that everyone couldn't see him clearly. Powerful sword energy and extremely swift speeds tore open the space in Yang Yi's path. The woman and the middle-aged man's expressions became completely solemn at this moment. They'd realized that they'd far underestimated the young man before them. But they didn't have the time to think because the sword energy had arrived before them. The middle-aged man, Huang Nian, took a small step forward and raised both his hands slightly. A moment later, he slapped them forward. Bang! A wave of powerful force swept forward. As soon as it came into contact with Yang Yi's sword energy, space shook violently while the powerful force of the collision pushed Huang Nian back repeatedly. Suddenly, the woman in red clothes stretched out her right hand, and a ray of red light flashed. If one looked carefully, one would notice that there was an extremely thin red string within the red light. Yang Yi raised his sword and swung it in response. The red light was instantly sliced into two, but the red string was still there. Moreover, it had arrived before Yang Yi and seemed to be about to shoot straight through Yang Yi's chest. This caught Yang Yi off guard. The red string had stopped just half an inch before Yang Yi's chest because Yang Yi was holding tightly to it. However, the powerful energy it carried caused Yang Yi's entire arm to tremble. "Explode!" The woman's voice resounded. Boom! The red thread in Yang Yi's grasp exploded apart, and Yang Yi was instantly blasted over 3 kilometers away. However, the woman's face fell because Yang Yi was fine. A huge ethereal white dragon had appeared behind Yang Yi, and his body was covered in white light. The force of the explosion from the red thread had been completely blocked off by the white light. The woman wasn't the only one with an unsightly expression on her face. It was the same for Huang Nian. He hadn't expected the young man's physical strength to be that formidable. As for the middle-aged man with a spear on his back, a wisp of surprise had flashed through his eyes. and there was curiosity in his eyes as he gazed at the ethereal dragon behind Yang Yi. Yang Yi cracked his neck, and then he took a step forward. Dozens of swords instantly appeared here, and as soon as Yang Yi took another step forward, a wave of mysterious energy appeared here. The sword domain. The middle-aged man and the woman were at the major Zen realm, so he couldn't deal with both of them without revealing a trump card of his. As soon as the sword domain and those energy swords appeared, the middle-aged man and woman's faces finally changed. Even Han Yi had undisguised shock in his eyes. The sword domain. At their level of cultivation, they naturally knew about the sword domain and had even seen some other domains. But the sword domain was quite rare. Yet now, they hadn't expected to see it being possessed by such a young man. At this instant, the woman felt slight regret. She regretted not making concessions. If she had, they wouldn't have to fight to the death now. Moreover, since the young man possessed such strength at his age and had even comprehended the sword domain, it was obvious that an extraordinary organization stood behind him. In short, it was a huge problem for them. But at this moment, they didn't have the time to think about that because they had to deal with Yang Ye's swords. Yang Yi slowly closed his eyes. As soon as his eyes were fully shut, the over 30 ethereal swords in the surroundings suddenly started to spin. In an instant, rays of light crisscrossed and enveloped both the middle-aged man and beautiful woman in an instant. Explosions resounded from within the rays of light, and it continued for almost 15 minutes before they gradually vanished. Yang Yi appeared before Li Shueishui and Wei Yu again, and they heaved slight sighs of relief when they saw that he was still alive. It wasn't that they cared a lot about him, but they were with him right now, and they would definitely be unable to escape a terrible fate if Yang Yi died. Huang Nian and the woman were still in front of Yang Yi, and they were alive. But they were heavily injured. Huang Nian's arms were gone, and the woman was worse. Her entire body was covered in dozens of injuries and half her face was gone. She wasn't beautiful anymore now, and she looked quite terrifying instead. However, Yang Yi had no intention of stopping. He held his sword in hand as he walked slowly in their direction. Meanwhile, the young man who fought Yang Yi earlier, the son of Huang Nian and the woman, suddenly appeared not too far away from Yang Yi. "What will it take to make you stop?" Yang Yi gazed at the woman. "Didn't she want my arms? Now, I'll take her life." As soon as he finished speaking, Yang Yi was about to attack again. But Han Yi suddenly appeared in front of Yang Yi. Han Yi sized up Yang Yi and said, "Please show mercy." Yang Yi looked Han Yi in the eyes. "Give me a reason." Han Yi grinned. "Didn't you want to head inside? We'll let you go in. Is that enough?" Yang Yi spoke indifferently. "Can you stop me?" "Of course." Han Yi smiled. "There are 23 major Zen realm experts here, and a half-step sage realm expert. Do you think that you can fight all of us?" Meanwhile, Li Shueishui suddenly asked, "There are so many experts here?" Han Yi nodded slightly and glanced at Yang Yi. "Young brother, we're all here for Originite or some other things, so it isn't necessary to fight to the death. Brother Huang Nian's family are in the wrong for what happened earlier, so I apologize on their behalf. Now, I officially invite all three of you to join us and search for those mysterious Originite. I wonder if you're willing to do that." Yang Yi thought for a moment and smiled. "Of course." Yang Yi put his sword away. Actually, he'd sensed numerous powerful auras in the surroundings from the very beginning. He was naturally not afraid of them, but while he wasn't afraid, it didn't represent that he had to fight them to the death. He hadn't fought Huang Nian and the woman because he felt unhappy. Yang Yi wasn't that petty. He'd mainly done so to display his strength and obtain their acknowledgement. Only then would they allow him, Li Shueishui, and Wei Yu to join them. Now he'd accomplished his objective. As for Huang Nian's family, he didn't care about them at all. It was extremely difficult for major Zen realm experts to kill him, because the physical defense he gained from utilizing the Sky Dragon was sufficient to throw many major Zen realm experts into despair. Huang Nian and his family clearly heaved sighs of relief when they heard that Yang Yi was willing to stop. If Yang Yi refused, then while they wouldn't die because Han Yi and the others wouldn't just stand by idly, they would be unable to avoid being kicked out from the group. Han Yi walked over to Yang Yi. Young brother, what's your name? Yang Yi replied, Yang Yi. Han Yi nodded. Come. Let me tell you about this place. It didn't take long for them to vanish on the spot, and Han Yi led them to the entrance of the place. There were over a dozen people here, and the weakest amongst them was at the major Zen realm. All of them gazed at Yang Ye's group when they arrived, or to be more precise, they were looking at Yang Yi. All of them nodded slightly as a form of greeting when Yang Yi gazed at them. They'd naturally witnessed the battle just now. It was naturally easy for those with strength to be acknowledged by others. Yang Yi nodded slightly in response as well. That was how he did things. If others respected him, he would respect them too. Human relationships were a mutual thing. Han Yi pointed towards the distance. See that? Yang Yi looked over. He saw a huge circular iron door, and it was the entrance to the building before him that seemed like a huge top. Yang Yi asked, It can't be opened? Han Yi shook his head. It can. But we dare not go in. Yang Yi was puzzled. Why? Han Yi explained. Because anyone who goes in will just die mysteriously. A few of us have already gone in, and all of them vanished without a trace. Moreover, we heard their horrified cries before they died. Yang Yi asked, There's something in there? Han Yi laughed bitterly. We know nothing about what's in there. However, we must go inside soon. Otherwise, it may vanish soon. Vanish? Yang Yi gazed at Han Yi. Why? Han Yi explained. It vanishes from time to time, and then it reappears somewhere else. We don't know why it does that. This planet isn't huge, but it isn't tiny either. So, if it vanishes, it will take quite a bit of effort for us to find it again. Moreover, the Four Paths and some other mysterious organizations may have sent their forces by now. Once they arrive and uncover the secrets of this secret realm, then there won't be anything left for us. He took a deep breath and continued. Now we're planning to make one last attempt. Yang Yi asked, How? Han Yi looked up into the distance. Break through by force and not go through the front door. Yang Yi looked off into the distance. As he gazed at the huge building before him, Yang Yi felt quite uncomfortable. He sensed danger. The prehistoric civilization. All of this was left behind by the people of the prehistoric civilization. What was their civilization in the martial Tao like? Perhaps many answers are hidden in there.